We've done 20 minutes and 30 minutes of useless facts, but what about 1 hour of useless Animal Crossing facts? Okay, ready, set, go. We need to start things off with talking about Hector. This dude was only in the first generation Animal Crossing games, but interestingly enough, his e-reader card claims that he hangs out with the other villager, Hambo. It's actually like worded in a joke type of way where it suggests that Hector invites Hambo more often than Hambo does to Hector, mostly because Hambo is a pig. Take that for what it is. It's not too often that we hear about villagers referencing each other in some sort of way or another. There's a few cases like sister villagers, but Hector and Hambo are technically one of the 3 known villager duos of friends, I guess, across the Animal Crossing universe. But what are those other duos out there? All the way back in the day, Allie's e-card would actually state that her and Zoe were best friends, and that third friendship, well, that goes to Chevra and Nan, surprisingly enough. These are the 3 groups of friends that transcend Animal Crossing time and space with their friendships. But yeah, Chevra and Nan apparently are close friends, as in Nan's house, Chevra's picture is up on the wall, and Chevra has a picture of Nan. Taking things even a step deeper, there's a reference to a Japanese children's song called Goat Male, or Yagi-san Yubin, which in the song stars a black goat and a white goat, so it's kind of like they're a pair here. Also, if you look at their house designs, it almost seems like they're inverted versions of each other, but maybe that's just me being overly analytical. Also, since we just talked about Hector, out of the total 488 Animal Crossing villagers that have ever appeared in an Animal Crossing game, only 105 of them have actually appeared in every single Animal Crossing game, including the spin-offs. That's less than 25%. But when you account for things like Amiibo Festival and whatnot, I guess it makes sense, though Amiibo Festival was a wild ride. Let's talk also about the rare erasure of Animal Crossing villagers. So KK Slider has this ongoing trend where his album artwork will feature various villagers from the Animal Crossing series. But all the way back in the first generation Animal Crossing games, there were many villagers that would not return in later Animal Crossing games, and because of that, the album artwork would be updated through the years to include only villagers featured in said game. For example, let's look at KK Dixie. This is the album artwork from Dobutsu no Mori E+. It has 2 villagers that wouldn't return later on, Fruity, who is the duck here, and another villager known as Madame Rosa, who's actually up in the balcony. However, later versions of this would be redone, where Fruity is replaced by Bill and Madame Rosa is just not there anymore. Over on KK Rally, the album artwork was changed also. In the original version, we had Hopkins, Sylvana, and Jubei on the front, but later on, that would be replaced with Cole, Peanut, and Rory instead. On KK Marathon, originally it was Madame Rosa and Carrot, but these would be replaced with Midge and Maple later on. On Neapolitan, Fruity and Ike were in it, but they were later replaced with Drake and Teddy. And last but not least, Steep Hill originally had the Japanese-only villager Megumi alongside Ketchup talking outside of the window in school uniforms, and in later versions of the game, they would be replaced with Daisy and possibly Mayel. It's a little bit hard to tell. Ketchup was removed for a little while before recently coming back with New Horizons, so it's likely she was also replaced for the iterations in like Animal Crossing New Leaf and Happy Home Designer. In Dobutsu no Mori Plus, the second of 3 Japanese releases of Animal Crossing, the first one on the GameCube that is, there was a straight up holiday exclusive to this version of the game on May 3rd called Garbage Memorial Day. I guess where you pay respect to garbage that we've lost along the way. Now it's supposed to correspond to the real world Japanese holiday Constitution Memorial Day, but it's called Garbage Memorial Day in this game. In the American release and then Dobutsu no Mori E+, the holiday would be removed and replaced with Spring Cleaning Day instead. As many of you know, Nintendo already had multiple versions of Animal Crossing's first generation game release in Japan. There's a Nintendo 64 version, then there was a GameCube version that kind of coincided with the Western localization version of Animal Crossing, and then there was the Ultimate version that only came out in Japan, which was Dobutsu no Mori E+. And in that version of the game, there's a lot of differences. We've talked about the differences before multiple times here. However, one difference that doesn't get talked about a lot actually is that you know how you could go and travel to the little island and like check out the little villager over there, hang out. If you had the little Game Boy adapter, you're able to play a mini game on your Game Boy. It was all good and dandy. The Ultimate E+ version that only released in Japan though actually had something extra where that villager, and there was a bunch of new ones introduced just for this version of the game, could randomly wash up on your shore, much like how Gulliver would wash up on your shore in the first Animal Crossing game as well. Animal Crossing City Folk was an interesting game because it introduced this whole like city aspect, and it was cool to have all these little shops and whatnot, and they had different ideas of what to put in those shops. However, one of the shops I feel like went mostly unused by most players, and it was this City Folk auction house where you could go in there and put furniture items up for auction, and other people could bid on your auction items, and you could also buy stuff. It was made specifically for Wi-Fi players in mind, where you would go to your friend's town, you could see what was available, and then you could bid on things, and then in turn you would get the item mailed to your mailbox. Even with the fact that Wi-Fi players were becoming more common when it came to Animal Crossing, I don't remember too many people back in the day ever actually using this, because typically if you wanted to buy something from someone, you would just talk to them and negotiate something from there, rather than actually like going there, looking at the auction house, and then trying to place a bid while they're also having other people come and visit to place a bid. It just seemed like a little bit of these extra hoops to jump through, and I don't think it ultimately was that popular, and probably one of the reasons why this became a thing exclusive to Animal Crossing City Folk, though it was open 24/7, which is more than what you can say about like Nook's Cranny. Do some of you remember that big old controversy from back in the day when Animal Crossing's official Twitter account posted a picture that seemed a little suspicious? You see, Animal Crossing New Horizons can only run on Nintendo Switch hardware at most 1080p when it's docked. So, does someone want to explain how the official Animal Crossing New Horizons Twitter page was able to post 4K screenshots from their game? This led to a frenzy where people were trying to figure out if there was a new update coming to Animal Crossing that would run it at 4K, or a new Nintendo Switch that would run Animal Crossing New Horizons in 4K if you played it on that system. Well, these were fun thoughts. Nothing ever came of them, and if anything, the official Animal Crossing Nintendo ran account occasionally would share something that also kind of made people wonder. Like, for instance, they would post an image, and the image technically had like trees in locations where you couldn't normally get the trees, like close to a cliff, which meant that they're playing probably on a modified version of Animal Crossing, which isn't too surprising. Obviously, they would have access to like development kits for their games, and they test different ideas and different prototypes, and they're able to drag and drop things. But it is interesting that a social media post would just feature things that aren't actually possible to do with your own version of the game. Okay, let's talk about Animal Crossing villagers that have either purple eyes or yellow eyes. Now, yellow and purple eyes were not available in any mainline Animal Crossing game until the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons. However, technically, you could get purple eyes for the first time in an Animal Crossing game in Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. That's a spin-off game. It's not a mainline game, but, you know, we'll give it some credit there. But yellow eyes wasn't something you're able to do until finally New Horizons, and my character is very grateful for that. And then, did you guys know that Danny Trejo himself was a pretty big Animal Crossing player, and he even did a video with someone where they looked around Danny Trejo's island from Animal Crossing? I don't know. That's just a crazy sentence. I think of him from some of the movies he's been in, like Machete, or I guess he was a playable character in Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies on that one map where there was snow and stuff. Was he in Breaking Bad also for a little bit? He was like on the Tortuga. Oh, wasn't he in Spy Kids also? Nonetheless, dude's an Animal Crossing player. Let's go all the way back to when Animal Crossing first released in North America and the larger West. It was September 16th, 2002. What's interesting is Animal Crossing had already been around for quite some time in Japan, and when Super Smash Bros. Melee for the GameCube originally released, which was December of 2001 here in the West, there were references to Animal Crossing even all the way back then, even though Animal Crossing technically hadn't come to the West yet. Similar to how some characters even, like similarly to how Roy was included in Super Smash Bros. Melee, even though he hadn't made his debut in the West really just yet. Now, of course, Animal Crossing didn't have any representation as an actual fighting character back in the Super Smash Bros. Melee days, but there were trophies that referenced the series. And to some people, this probably was their first encounter with the Animal Crossing franchise, if they possibly got an Animal Crossing trophy in Smash Bros. Almost a year before Animal Crossing released in the West. So there's 3 different trophies available in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and they're all really unique here because these characters all have their original Japanese N64 designs on them and not their updated updated, localized versions of the characters here. So like Mr. Rossetti's wearing his white shirt, Tom Nook's apron is Japanese, KK Slider goes by his more common Japanese name, even though he does go by both technically in all versions of the game. The descriptions are a little bit interesting too. This is like the first time someone who didn't know who Tom Nook was and was like, who's this trophy? This is what they would learn about Animal Crossing that wouldn't come out for almost a year later. This guy's the friendly neighborhood shopkeeper who kindly helps the player set up his or her first house. He has a nose for business and his customer service is second to none. During the course of the game, his store starts as a corner shop, expands to become a convenience store, and finally becomes a thriving supermarket. I guess they forgot about like the bigger upgrades you can get to your store, but that's not the point. KK Slider, who in this game is Toda KK, has this description: a wandering musician whose daily life is a bit of a mystery. He plays in front of the train station every Saturday night starting at 8 p.m. He has a large repertoire and plays both old and new hits from all over the world. His music is so ingrained in the villagers that it's impossible to imagine them living without it. And then lastly, Mr. Rossetti, which has this description: prepare to receive a really long talking to if you reset the game. The next time you play Mr. Rossetti will be waiting to deliver his best scolding. No matter what your intentions are, pressing the reset button will bring you face to face with this fervent character. Sometimes the only way to shut him up is to apologize. Very interesting, I think. For people who knew nothing at all about Animal Crossing, and this is their only first impression, they might have a very, very, very different perspective as to what on earth Animal Crossing would be about. I don't even know if Animal Crossing was the official localized name at this point. It does say future release instead of what game it was in. So it was even more of a mystery if, you know, you didn't have access to the internet or you weren't regularly browsing the internet for Nintendo news, which in 2001, I don't know how many of us really were. So you just don't even know who these characters are or where they're from. You just have to hope you recognize it on the shelves if you ever see it, if you were interested. And from the box art of Animal Crossing, you might have to look at it really hard to even realize it's the same game that had these 3 trophies. Really, really cool. I think this is one of the coolest little factoids about Animal Crossing and Smash Bros. That go hand in hand. Of course, by the time that Super Smash Bros. Brawl came around, there was way more Animal Crossing representation. There were now 24 trophies introduced in Smash Bros. Brawl, all referencing Animal Crossing and Animal Crossing Wild World for the DS. A few little things to note: the default Animal Crossing boy kind of has the same appearance as he would have when he later would be introduced in Smash Bros. 4 for the Wii U and 3DS, except the eyes are a different variation of the default villager eyes. But yeah, there's some other really cool trophies added in here. There's like Timmy, Tommy, and Tom Nook all together. We got Gulliver, but Space Gulliver. By the time Smash Bros. 4 came out, the amount of trophies were upped this time to a total of 61 trophies, which does actually kind of make sense because now Animal Crossing had graduated into actually becoming a playable character. The 3DS version had quite a bit of different trophies from the Wii U version, and then there were some that were universally in both, and then some Wii U exclusive ones as well, but ultimately kind of interesting to see that they're all here. One thing I was surprised to find was that Isabelle had a special winter outfit that was actually just restricted and locked to only the 3DS version of the game. Kind of interesting for a trophy to have a winter outfit, but hey, they did it. Okay, and then by the time that Animal Crossing's representation in Smash Bros. Ultimate came to be, we now had both Isabelle and the villager featured as playable characters, and in total, the amount of spirits, which I guess were like the replacement for trophies, ended up totaling around 43. So a few less, but they changed how like spirits work. Like there was a whole thing where you could like alter stats for characters. It was a little weird, but nonetheless, some interesting ones made it that I wouldn't have expected to show up, like Serena, who only was in City Folk and not in New Leaf or anything, but she shows up here. She's kind of a forgotten character that hasn't been seen in a long time. She was that City Folk fountain that you could throw an axe at and get a better axe. There's an Animal Crossing game that 99.9% of Animal Crossing fans haven't played before, and we've talked about it on this channel before, but I'm always very interested in the little nuanced things about it. For instance, the first generation of Animal Crossing has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actual versions of it. There was a 5th version named Dongwu Senlin that came out in 2006, 1 year before City Folk came out on the Wii for the Chinese IQ player. And like I said, we've talked about this game before, so I'm surprised that this game exists, and it's based off the N64 version of the game, but some of the differences that pop up from time to time are really interesting. One of the ones I didn't know about until very recently was that there was a reference to Pikachu taken out of this localization of the game. In the original Animal Crossing, you might remember that there is a pocket Pikachu item that one of your villagers can have lost or something, and you can bring it from one villager to another and deliver it. It was just like a little clever homage or nod to the Pokemon franchise here in Animal Crossing, but during the localization process for Animal Crossing or Dongwu Senlin, this item was was actually changed completely to remove any references to Pocket Pikachu, and a brand new item was put in its place. Instead of a Pocket Pikachu, a villager will lose the IQ GBA, which is obviously different from Pocket Pikachu. Fortunately, YouTuber Kenny's Video Archive has, well, archive footage of this interesting interaction happening here. And what is also interesting is that the IQ GBA that replaces the Pocket Pikachu was a real device that released in mainland China in 2004. There were two versions of this device, a Game Boy Advance version and a Game Boy Advance SP version, and they look pretty normal, like a normal Nintendo Game Boy, but it says IQ on it, and that's pretty cool. Honestly, Dongwu Senlin is an interesting Animal Crossing game that's just a gift that keeps on giving us interesting facts for Animal Crossing. Not including localization teams, the first Animal Crossing game, Dobutsu no Mori for the Nintendo 64, had a staff team list of 57 people credited for working on the game. In turn, Animal Crossing Wild World, which released in 2005 for the Nintendo DS, had 138 people listed, 134 professional roles, and 4 special thankses. Animal Crossing City Folk had a slightly smaller team, this time 111 people, 5 of those being special thankses again. By the time Animal Crossing New Leaf was set to release, the credits in this title have 198 people listed, this time 20 special thankses. And then Animal Crossing New Horizons had a whopping 517 people listed in the credits with 37 special thankses. Now, of course, the difference between Animal Crossing New Horizons and the first ever Dobutsu no Mori for the Nintendo 64 is quite different, but to be fair, the first game didn't have localization teams, so there's no localization people added, and down the road, the localization team would play a role in being credited in those later games. But man, the jump from New Leaf to Animal Crossing New Horizons is pretty substantial on its own. If we're talking about side Animal Crossing games, I am very surprised that Happy Home Designer had 205 people listed in the credits. Nintendo must have, after New Leaf's release, started growing the Animal Crossing team internally, or just that whole development studio, since they also were working on other games like Splatoon. I would really like to know the stats on an Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, but unfortunately the credits aren't posted on any website I could find. I did look, I couldn't find anything. Now, we are going to be saying RIP to Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, at least in the sense of how it originally released, as they're doing something with that game. However, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp did evolve quite a bit over the years, and if you didn't stick with Pocket Camp long enough to see some of the newer things added, you might not have known this next thing, but Animal Crossing Pocket Camp actually did a pretty big step in involving players no longer just having to decorate, a RV that for some reason seemed way bigger on the inside than it was on the outside, but eventually Pocket Camp did add the ability to decorate a cabin, and the cabins were actually pretty massive in size, which was something that kind of surprised me when I did go back to revisit Pocket Camp, maybe for an upcoming video, we'll see. The Firework Festival in Animal Crossing is something that's existed for a very long time, but I feel like no other Animal Crossing YouTuber really talks about it or discusses how it's changed over the years. So here we are gonna do it real quick. The very first Animal Crossing game, Dobutsu no Mori, or Animal Force on the Nintendo 64, had its own unique firework festival, unlike the rest of the first generation Animal Crossing games that would release later on. Back in the old days that most of us never experienced, the firework festival was held on the town's lake every Saturday through August, and Red would operate this little stall where you could buy gyroids, air checks, or fruit. Speaking of air checks, how did he get, these like copies of KK Slider's music? Are these illegal burns of KK Slider's CDs? It was pretty simple though for the firework festival. Other than Red having his little booth where he tries to capitalize on a fireworks show, you can see the fireworks from the lake, and that's pretty neat. Later on though, when Animal Crossing would release in the West, and then the ultimate Dobutsu no Mori E+ that would release, the firework festival would actually be changed a little bit to coincide with the localization of the game. For instance, the firework festival was moved from its August event to July 4th from 7 to 9, which coincides with Independence Day in the United States. Interestingly enough though, the bulletin board that advertises the fireworks show actually states that it's to commemorate the anniversary of the train station opening, because I guess the United States, doesn't exist in the Animal Crossing universe, which is fair. Also, you could find Tortimer, and he'll be in some random acre in your Animal Crossing town, and he'll give you a decorative bottle rocket, though in the first GameCube release of Animal Crossing in Japan, he'll give players a 3 football. And then of course, Red exists in this version, or in all of these versions as well, though his stall does look quite a bit different, and he doesn't have like the traditional headband on that he had in the N64 version. He has like a new little visor, which is interesting. He sells items that you can actually hold, like balloons, pinwheels, fans, and whatnot, but not like the gyroids and stuff he actually sold in the original one. When it comes to Animal Crossing Wild World and City Folk, these games try to do like a all-encompassing version of the game game, so they didn't have to relocalize the game multiple times like they did in the previous generation. So instead of like the 4th of July commemorating the train station opening, we just get a fireworks festival every Saturday in August. Though to be fair, in City Folk, it's every Sunday instead of Saturday. The technology of Animal Crossing on the DS was a big deal though, because now you could see the fireworks in the sky. You didn't have to actually go to the water to see the fireworks, and this would carry on for later games as well. Also, I guess it's worth noting that in Wild World and City Folk, Red is nowhere to be seen, but Tortimer will appear and he'll give players explosives. Not really. He'll give you either a sparkler or a Roman candle that can, shoot out sparks, and that's kind of cool too. Tortimer also might give the player a fortune for the night through the mail, but I've never actually seen this happen. When it came time for Animal Crossing New Leaf to release, there was a big overhaul to the firework festival once again. This time around, they were hosted on Sundays, much like City Folk, and Isabelle would be the new host for the festivities over in the event plaza. And she would hand out different types of like party favors, like bopper hats or a fountain firework, which you can place to the ground and like little fireworks will come out and villagers will clap. It's a whole experience, a whole ordeal. It's pretty fun. But also in Animal Crossing New Leaf, you could submit a custom design to be used as a firework during the show. And I always thought that was a really, really cool thing. Then on top of that, Red makes his return with his new little booth, trying to capitalize on the holiday once again. And he'll sell cookies for 500 bells. And inside each cookie, there is a special ticket, and the ticket can be redeemed for a various item. Now, some of the items aren't that good, but there are some cool things you can get. Like even the worst item still gets you like a Roman candle or a sparkler. But here are some of the items popping up on the screen that you can get from Red, and they look pretty cool. Get the Ultra Scope if you're really lucky. Then most of you probably remember how Animal Crossing New Horizons fireworks show acts. It came in the 1.4 summer update Wave 2 to Animal Crossing New Horizons, and pretty much every Sunday through August, Isabelle hosts the show once again. The only day of the year, or days of the year, where Isabelle's allowed to leave her office. There are a few interesting things here. Able Sisters will be selling casual kimonos, or just some of the different kimonos or yukatas that you can get. Once again, you can submit custom designs like you could previously in New Leaf, and Red operates a new raffle stand in the event plaza where he sells tickets that you can then win one of 24 handheld items, much like the old days, but this time you can get like balloons, pinwheels, tweeters, a couple of little things, and it's kind of neat. Later on, there'd be an update where you also could get food items from Red through the whole like ticket system that he has as well. Also, just backing up a little bit to Animal Crossing New Leaf, if you look at the Ultra items like that Ultra Scope I talked about, or the Ultra Hand, or those other items that you can get from Red with the tickets, these are actually special products that Nintendo made back in the day before they entered the video game industry, which is a really cool homage to old Nintendo, because Nintendo's been around since like the late 1800s. They made the Hanafuda cards, and then they did a lot of different business ventures. So whenever something references the company history beyond just like the Nintendo Entertainment System or before the early video game years of Nintendo, I always think it's something really cool and worth noting. Something really interesting is that in Japan, there is an app known as Line, which a lot of Japanese people use to message each other. They use that more than like iMessage or WhatsApp and stuff. It's just like a messaging platform that's popular in Japan, right? But in 2015, there was an official animated sticker pack inspired by Animal Crossing that would be added to Line directly by Nintendo, which would give you 24 animated 2D stickers that you could use in the chat, and they move like when you send the message. And they were like the equivalent of $2 USD. They were pretty cool, and they just have a lot of really fun things that I wish we could use if we use Line here regularly, if more people used it. A couple of years later, there would be another pack added, which was the Animal Crossing 15th Anniversary sticker pack, which had a bunch of newer ones, this time with updated stuff from like Happy Home Designer, even some of the newer villagers that were added in that later Animal Crossing Welcome Amiibo New Leaf update were special here, but these ones are really cool as well. I mean, look at Hamlet being all professional, or Chow's having a rough day, I feel like. I don't know. This pack is pretty incredible. But then there's a really interesting thing that came a little bit later in 2019 where they added a special Nindori pack. Now, Nindori is a very interesting character because Nindori started off as an Animal Crossing character all the way back for Animal Crossing E+ as a special contest that Nintendo Dream Magazine did, where people could submit their own Animal Crossing character idea. Whichever one was the winner would end up being added into the game and then would be available by like a special e-reader card. And Nindori ended up being the drawing that won. And I mean, he looks terrifying in the original game, but the fact that this obscure character that never returned in any future Animal Crossing games now kind of got a little resurrection here is pretty cool. Now, to be fair, Nindori became the mascot for Dream. So this kind of spans beyond just Animal Crossing, but the origins are rooted in Animal Crossing, so we're counting it. Also, while not really stickers, there were also line themes that they had in the game as well, which are like these little like background themes that were Animal Crossing inspired as well. They're pretty cool. One of the coolest features to ever be added into Animal Crossing was actually not in Animal Crossing New Horizons at launch, but one that rolled out in a later update. You see, originally in Animal Crossing New Horizons, you had access to your phone and you could pull out your camera and take nice little screenshots, but in a later update, they actually added the perspective of first-person mode, which you could then use your camera for to at least walk through your island north only with your camera in first-person mode, where you can kind of see things up close, which was really cool. I used this a lot when I was trying to get like a cool camera angle for my island, but also this same feature works indoors. So if you're in a house, you can walk around it in first person mode, and you can of course inside of houses turn like sideways and in all directions, so you can actually see all of your house in its first person glory. Something that's kind of a really cool feature. I do wonder if this maybe might set up a future Animal Crossing game to have maybe a all around camera. I feel like that would be a really good step for Animal Crossing now, since we've kind of moved the perspectives a bit. It'd be cool to be able to like have a 360 camera that we can, you know, decorate all sides of the island with, like other games that let you decorate stuff. There's an interesting feature in Animal Crossing New Horizons where each Animal Crossing villager is set to have their own favorite KK Slider song. This has been something that's existed for a long time in some regard to another, like especially in the older Animal Crossing games, villagers would have like a certain song playing inside of their house. But in Animal Crossing New Horizons, while each villager does have a set favorite KK Slider song, these preferences could actually change over time. For instance, if outdoors you have a certain KK Slider song play often enough, they might start to like it more, and when you talk to them in conversation, it might shift to becoming their new favorite. I think we need to also talk about the Animal Crossing diet, because what do the Animal Crossing villagers eat? Do they eat each other? Is this cannibalism? Because like, what do you do when you have like a cow villager and then someone eats a cheeseburger? You would be like, wow, this is getting pretty dark. But there's a couple of interesting things going on in Animal Crossing. First of all, we know there is a distinction between certain animals and like villager animals. They're not quite the same. There's a couple of inside jokes in Animal Crossing already alluding to that, but like we also know that like there are birds that exist that aren't actually bird villagers. And actually, if you pay close attention, there's been a lot of thought put into the food items mostly in Animal Crossing, as for the most part in Animal Crossing New Horizons at least, if you look at all of the dishes that you can cook, there's actually not a single meal that is like meat based other than, you know, fish, but there's no fish villagers. Could this hint at the fact that the entire Animal Crossing ecosystem universe are full of pescatarians? Maybe. Even with the addition that they did in Happy Home Paradise for Animal Crossing New Horizons, there were a lot of food-related items added into the game, but none of these are meat-based dishes. However, this actually isn't always the case. If we go back to Animal Crossing New Leaf, while the default game didn't have any meat items, when they did the Welcome Amiibo update and later on Happy Home Academy, there were some meat-related food items added into the game that you could use for decoration, like a burger meal, for example. Now, I guess this could be like Burger King's Impossible Burger, and that'd be a fair argument. But what's interesting is this item pretty much was directly replaced in the New Horizons 2.0 update with a diced salad sandwich set, where they changed it from burger to like a vegetarian salad. So ultimately, my big theory on this one is that they ended up taking like the meat and meat-related items, because there were more food items in New Leaf as well, and they added them in for the update, maybe because they were just trying to like come up with cool ideas, but at the same time, maybe like, you know, there was like a longer oversight or something that happened where originally across all the Animal Crossing games, there was like an internal rule, you know, let's not add the whole Pokemon complex to Animal Crossing, where we have to wonder if like, you know, in Pokemon, if they eat Pokemon or not, or how that all works. So maybe they wanted to just avoid that topic altogether, so they had this rule, but it was broken for the little like DLC update and spin-off game. But then by the time they got to New Horizons, they're like, okay, let's get back on track, let's straighten things out, let's replace everything with vegetarian options, so we don't have that conversation. I don't think it's a statement on vegetarianism in the real world, but I think it's more just to like avoid the thought of slaughtering a fellow villager for food, because that would be a wild Animal Crossing game. Back in Animal Crossing Wild World, this gate system was introduced to make it for multiplayer functionality, and while the original GameCube version had a train station, in the newer games it was replaced with this. But in Animal Crossing City Folk, the building could actually be one of 3 different types of buildings. There was was the old building style, the palace style, and the castle style. And it would just be randomly generated when you first started your town in City Folk. Now, what was interesting was back in the day, people took this a step further, and whenever they were trying to like set up their town, some people would auto reset their game over and over again to get the specific checkpoint gate style that they wanted. Personally, I'm a fan of the old building style, but I think back in the day I actually had the palace style. I don't think I would have been too much of a fan of the castle style because I felt like the castle style was kind of similar to the one that we already had in Wild World, but I understand its need for it to be there. Nonetheless, the whole gate system would be done away with in Animal Crossing New Leaf, so it's just something kind of unique about City Folk having these different versions that no other Animal Crossing game ever had. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival for the Wii U had this interesting mini game called Rossetti Bop, where you would have to scan in 3 Amiibo cards, and then the characters would appear in the mini game itself. And it's an interesting game, maybe a little bit weird. And from looking at it, you would think, hey, this is a weird 4-player game, but it's actually a 1-player game where essentially the player who's chosen to participate in Amiibo Festival scans in 3 Amiibo cards, and then those characters show up, and you have to smack this Mr. Rossetti inflatable doll that pops up. Then, depending on how many times you smack him in the head, it correlates to how many tickets you end up earning in the larger Amiibo Festival game. I thought that this fact was interesting because most of us never even played Amiibo Festival, because who wanted to spend $60 on this on the Wii U back in the day? Hey, shout out to all you guys who actually did get Amiibo Festival and played it. Tell me what you thought about it. In Animal Crossing New Horizons, there's a chance that one of your villagers can randomly become self-aware to Animal Crossing New Horizons being, well, a video game. It does, put a bunch of existential questions out there for Animal Crossing fans and lore experts like myself, I guess, if that's what you want to call me. But it's interesting. Here's some of the dialogue that can be said that has been screenshotted by Nacho Man on Reddit, where he shared his villager, Biscuit, sharing, the suspicions, but this can happen with different villagers as well. Have you ever thought fruit trees grow way too fast? And ain't it weird that trees all have 3 kinds of wood? And have you ever noticed there's pretty music everywhere? It's great, but it's weird. I never really thought that the music was something that these villagers were hearing just, as an ominous sound coming from the sky. And does Tom Nook make any kind of sense to you? Yeah, I'll buy your seashells so you can give me back my own money to pay off a house I'm selling to you. This thing's getting really, really deep here. It's also obvious our lives are fake. We all should have saw it a long time ago. A long, old time ago. Bro is straight up realizing he is in the Matrix and he might be Neo, but nonetheless, Biscuit Neo aside, I do think it's always funny whenever these types of conversations do randomly pop up. It does make you think of the bigger picture, something that'll never be explored in Animal Crossing, obviously, but something kind of fun nonetheless. Something I feel like that Animal Crossing series Denzel made a few years back kind of plays into that plotline directly. Similarly, something like this actually happened back in the original Animal Crossing game as well, a little bit of self-awareness. I wonder if over the years we get all the self-awareness moments and put them together, we'll have some insight into the deeper existential lore of Animal Crossing. But look at this conversation that another person on Reddit responded to the first post on Reddit. Panasonic FM14 posted this. We got Tangy now, speculating what's going on here. This has been bugging me for a while now. What happens to trees after you cut them down? Why do they just vanish the second they hit the ground? The stump stays there, but the tree vanishes. Don't you think it's kind of creepy? What's going on here? In the first Animal Crossing game, you are pretty limited in how weather would be presented. I mean, you would see the weather kind of in the coloration and specifically the grass, mostly back in the day. And, I mean, you could tell if it was like a rainy day or a cloudy day, obviously, but you couldn't see the sky like you could in later Animal Crossing games. The coolest thing was in Dobutsu no Mori E+, the Japanese-only ultimate version of the game. You could occasionally see a rainbow above a waterfall, but outside of that, weather was pretty limited in, like, real-time visualization. Animal Crossing Wild World would be the first game to really have different skies depending on the weather, and it is kind of interesting the differences. Nookopedia cites 7 different weather variations. There's the clear weather day, there's the partially cloudy with a rainbow sometimes in the day type of day, there's the rainy day, which is like a cloudy day with water involved. You can also see a cloudy day in an evening, the really cool evening night where it's like this cool sunburst of colors. It's like all red and stuff. Probably the most colorful time of any Animal Crossing game. I don't think they ever replicated this coloration in another game. And then there's like clouds at night and rain at night. And you can kind of see the evolution of how the different colorations worked, but it was something that worked really well for Wild World. And then of course you tied that to the whole like constellation system, and it was a cool little thing for the DS version of the game that was very innovative for its time. Like this was a very clever idea of an aspect that they could use that also made the whole 2-screen thing make sense. Animal Crossing City Folk did evolve a little bit in the form of weather functionality. While it mostly was just the same as what we had in Wild World, it followed a lot of the same rules Wild World had established. There were a couple of interesting things. You could see meteors falling from the sky. The rainbow isn't as like cheesy as maybe the Wild World one. Look at them side by side. This one's a little more faint, a little more realistic, you know, capitalizes on the depth that was allowed with the Wii hardware instead of a DS. Clouds looked a lot more like dark and kind of spread out, unlike a sunny day. But one thing that was really cool added to Animal Crossing City Folk was the Aurora Borealis. It was just something that would occasionally pop up in the winter, and it looked vivid. Animal Crossing New Leaf kind of just took the same concepts and built with that, adding more detail and coloration across the board. They kept things like the Aurora Borealis, but did add like a different way of how the rainbow would be presented, this time being more symmetrical, and there were double rainbows added in. So that's a full rainbow across the sky. Animal Crossing New Horizons obviously has the most going on, and it's probably for the better. I do remember while it kept the most weather similarly, there is times where like a nighttime storm, like late at night, I remember feeling like things were so dark in the town running around, and I kind of liked that. It was just like, okay, it's like a lightning, thundery storm, rain night. It is dark. But then like on a clear night, things are just a little bit more lit up. There's still things like shooting stars and Aurora Borealis. There's actually different clouds that can appear in the early fall to winter. Apparently these are called cirrocumulus clouds, and they're like the more like spread out type of lighter clouds. And they also added something really cool, but there is heavy fog that you can only find in the very early hours, like around 7 a.m. in October through March. I do think they should do something again with fog in the future. Maybe do something in like October at nighttime. I feel like fog rolling in on a random day of the week would be really cool. But hey, that's just me throwing ideas out there. Who would have thought grass would have been such a complex system in Animal Crossing? But yeah, back in the day, there was different types of grass patterns you could have at random generated on your Animal Crossing game. So yeah, when you started your town in the first Animal Crossing game, you would be assigned one of 3 possible grass shape variations. You could have triangular grass that would also result in hexagon snow in the winter time. You could have circular grass, which would mean that your snow would be square shaped, or you could have square grass, which would make your snow a really cool star shape in the winter. Just something interesting to kind of make one town look different as opposed to other people's towns. The same system would be used in Wild World and City Folk, though the combination patterns would be different. This time around, instead of it being triangle and hexagon, you would have triangle grass and square snow. You would have circular grass and star snow, and square grass and hexagonal snow. Animal Crossing New Leaf actually removed hexagonal snow as an option altogether, this time having just different variations again. You could either have triangle grass and square snow, circular grass and star snow, or square grass and circle snow. But what's interesting is when we get to Animal Crossing New Horizons, they did things completely different. There isn't different patterns on your island. Everybody has the same pattern. But what I find very interesting is that they opted for triangular grass and circular snow. And what's cool about this is that this is a pattern that has never been done before. So across all of the Animal Crossing games, triangle grass and circle snow had never been paired together, but in New Horizons, it's the only game to have it paired together. I don't know what the plan was always with Animal Crossing New Horizons. Way at the very beginning, the first reveal trailer of the game that was shown off, the grass pattern was incredibly limited and just in a few sections. And I think over time they decided to change the appearance of grass. There was backlash from the fan community too, to make it a little bit more consistent with the art style that had been around for so long. But it did look like they were maybe toying around with the possibility of losing the artistic like triangle system for the whole grass and going for just like little patches. But ultimately that ended up getting scrapped, and we get what we actually have in New Horizons, which still looks more realistic than previous games, but you know, still kind of sticks to the whole triangle pattern. If we go all the way back to the original GameCube version of Animal Crossing, there is the Nintendo bench that actually has this Nintendo logo and the Nintendo.com website. But if you actually look at it in the Doutsu no Mori Plus game, the Japanese first version of the GameCube version, the bench actually has Nintendo written in Japanese and not their logo. Also, it has the Japanese Nintendo website on the bench as well. Okay, on the original GameCube version of Animal Crossing, one of the coolest things were those NES games that you could play. They were really cool. And the GameCube version had 19 different NES games that you could play in the files. There's also, though, a bunch of cut ones that don't have models and are mentioned in text, or at least partially are playable. And these aren't like the infamous 4 that everyone talks about that you could get with like some cheating or whatever. There's other games that maybe were intended for the Animal Crossing release. There's Famicom Grand Prix, F1 Race, Wrecking Crew, Excite Bike, Dr. Mario, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, and Katakita Mario Bros. That last one is actually an enhanced version of the Famicom Mario Bros. Game from the Famicom Disk Writer that was released in 1988 in partnership with the Japanese food company Nagatanyan, and it featured game advertisements from them. The game actually never has been re-released, so if it would have been included in Animal Crossing, this would have been the first and only re-release of this specific version of Mario Bros, and we haven't been able to actually see a re-release in some official capacity ever since. I mean, this wasn't one either. Have you ever been curious when a build of Animal Crossing was finalized? We actually have the information for the final build dates and times of the original GameCube game, and it's a little interesting to see when builds were locked in for Animal Crossing. Like, for instance, the first Animal Crossing game for the GameCube that came to the US was finalized and locked in place, ready to be published, February 8th, 2001 at just 16 minutes after midnight. If you ever played Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, first of all, sorry, and second, you might know that during the quiz show minigame, there can be questions that ask you to identify fossils. The fossils that can appear in this questionnaire are the 20 fossils that can pop up in Animal Crossing New Leaf. Apparently, Pelly goes on a lot of dates. This is like some lore, I guess. On the back of her and Phyllis's e-reader card, she asks Phyllis to cover her night shift since she has a date, to which Phyllis replies again. That's the 7th time this week. Pelly, might be a gold digger, because she also talks about on her card how she wants a man that makes 80 million a year. And Phyllis was always the one getting the bad rap. But look at Pelly's ambitious goals for a man, for an Animal Crossing man pelican thing. So in Animal Crossing, there's this t-shirt called the Annyeong tee, and it has these Korean letters, which is the informal version of hello, where Annyeong, formal version being Annyeong Haseo. My Korean isn't good here. This isn't the only t-shirt that has a greeting in a different language on it, though. There's this shirt that says bonjour for French, ciao for Italian. There's this hallo t-shirt for German, and there's a hello shirt for English. There's a hoi t-shirt for Dutch, hola shirt for Spanish, konnichiwa for Japanese, and a pivet shirt for Russian, a ni hao shirt for simplified Chinese, and the he t-shirt for Mandarin Chinese, meaning that there's 11 different shirts that all say hello. Animal Crossing New Horizons also introduced a new variant of the basketball top that says NTDO for like Nintendo 10 on it, and every jersey color variant is inspired by a real NBA team color, surprisingly. Now, if we look at the default color, that's purple and yellow, that is also worn by the villager Bill, it probably here is a Lakers color inspiration, and that season when New Horizons released, the number 10 was associated with the Lakers player Jared Dudley. The more you know. Each color of the batter's helmet and baseball caps also have different knockoff logos to a real-life Major League Baseball team, like red are the New York Yankees, yellow are the Detroit Tigers, navy blue are the Boston Red Sox, orange is a big W, which most likely is for the Washington Nationals, and green has a wolf logo, which is not an actual team, but some teams do use animals as their team logos, so it could be like a little play on that or homage there. There's these night vision goggles here that look suspiciously a lot like the ones that Sam Fisher wore in the Splinter Cell series. So one thing that's really interesting about Animal Crossing New Horizons is that it doesn't matter who you are or who you think you are. When you start your game in Animal Crossing New Horizons for the first time and you get to the island, the other 2 villagers that will be with you will always have the same personality traits, though they could be any of the possible villagers with those personality traits. So whenever you get there, you'll always have one sisterly personality trait villager and one jock type Animal Crossing villager. That's just the way that they wanted to set it up to start things off. Then on top of that, villagers 3, 4 and 5 will always be peppy, normal, and lazy, though it doesn't necessarily have to be in that order. And then finally, your 6th villager will likely be a smug villager. Then after that, it's like free, like full-on freedom to pick your last villagers or replace the villagers that you do have, but kind of an interesting function that's like set in stone for the beginning of Animal Crossing New Horizons. Of course, New Horizons was different because you start off with such a few amount of like villagers compared to other games, but it was an interesting way that they kind of made that arc happen. Then also, there are some other interesting things that, of course, you might have noticed this, though, that every Animal Crossing villager has a different time that they will wake up or go to bed. And this is actually also based around their personality. Let's look at them real quick because it is kind of interesting. Lazy Animal Crossing villagers will wake up at 8 a.m. and then go to bed at 11 p.m., meaning these guys are sleeping for 9 hours. Jocks, on the other hand, only get 6 hours of sleep, going to bed around 12:30 a.m. and waking up at 6:30 a.m. If you've ever played really late at night, you might have noticed your cranky villager still being up and around because these guys will stay all the way up until 3:30 a.m. Though they do sleep in until 9 a.m. the next day, giving them only 5.5 hours of sleep every night. Smug villagers will also stay up pretty late, staying up till about 2 a.m., but they wake up early at 7 a.m. So now these guys are down to just 5 hours of sleep. Then on the female side of things, normal villagers will sleep for about 6 hours, going to bed around midnight and waking up at 6 a.m., bright and early. Peppy villagers will stay up until 1:30 a.m. and then wake up at 7 a.m., so also getting about 5.5 hours of sleep. Snooty villagers will stay up until 2:30 a.m. They wake up at 8:30 a.m., so they get 6 hours of sleep. And sisterly villagers, they'll stay up all the way until 3 a.m., almost making it to cranky villagers' time of 3:30, but they do sleep in an extra half an hour the next morning, waking up at 9:30 a.m., meaning that they get still quite a bit more sleep. They're getting 6.5 hours of sleep. I never realized that the KK Slider song, Stale Cupcakes, actually has a lot of interesting things about it. First of all, this song only first appeared in Dobutsu no Mori E+, that final ultimate version of the Japanese Animal Crossing game for the GameCube. According to Wikipedia, though, this song is based off of sadcore, which is like a genre variant of alternative rock music that started in the 1980s. Let's just like listen to the song real quick for a short snippet. And while I don't think this song really makes anyone feel too sad, there is something kind of melancholic about this specific song. Now, interestingly enough, it doesn't have the name Stale Cupcakes in Japan. The name is actually Blue Onigiri, which is maybe why the cover is like blue on the album artwork. And originally, this song was in Dobutsu no Mori E+ and Wild World as a song that would only play if the player made an invalid song request. You would get this song. By the time Animal Crossing City Folk rolled around, though, Stale Cupcakes would be upgraded to a secret song that could be only heard and obtained if you requested the song specifically. No villagers randomly have the song in their house. However, it stops being considered a secret song by the time Animal Crossing New Leaf rolls around, and the song does show up in the houses of villagers Diana, Julian, and Rodeo. Matter of fact, Diana's version of the song is a music box that plays the air check version of the song that sounds like this. Okay, and then of course in Animal Crossing New Horizons, the song's still there. It's still just a regular song. It's not a special secret song now, even though it doesn't have like the KK part at the beginning. So it shows up in the houses of Aurora, Filbert, Kit, Ruby, and Wade. You can even buy it in the Nook Shopping daily selection, depending on if it actually comes into rotation or not. And it shows up in even more houses in Happy Home Paradise. It shows up in Daisy, Gwen, Lily, and Sally's houses as well. Now, if we look at the Animal Crossing anime, that still to this day surprises me how many people don't know that this ever existed. This song didn't make it into the actual movie. However, they did a bonus official soundtrack for the film, and the song was included in that. Then you take it a step further in Mario Kart 8 when you're playing on the winter version of the Animal Crossing course. KK Slider sometimes can be present at the roost, and he will be singing a short song. You can barely hear it because you're usually driving by and stuff, but if you pay close attention, it's actually a short loop of Stale Cupcakes, which it's hard to hear with background music on top of it, but it is Stale Cupcakes. Before Dobutsu no Mori Animal Forest released on the Nintendo 64 in Japan, there was a reveal of the game at Space World 2000, and there are some interesting differences about this version of the game compared to what the eventual actual release of the game would be like. Like, for instance, the bulletin board was actually near the Bell Shrine instead of near the 4 houses where the player was forced to live back in the first generation Animal Crossing games. If you pay attention to some of the villagers in the early version of the game, Kiki's name was actually Anchovy, or at least in Japanese, where in the final release of the game, her name was Caviar in Japanese. This is a similar situation for Olivia, where in the early version of the game, her name was Reme, maybe Lame. I don't know really. But in the final version of the game, her name was Olivia in katakana. So I think that was probably a good name change decision there. Also, Nook's Cranny looked different in the Space World presentation of Animal Crossing. It looked more like a cozy log cabin. And the work uniform says the kanji for shop over and over and over again. And it was like a blue sky uniform as opposed to the classic green uniform that we had to wear back in the early days. There's a few other little differences, like whatever those scrolls are in the background on the table, whether those were wallpapers or carpets, I'm not too sure. But still, it's always interesting to look at the early builds for Animal Crossing. Also, the title for the Space World presentation, like the title screen here, looks a lot different than the final logo we would end up getting in Dobutsu no Mori. Like, you know, it's kind of more formal. I don't know what the right word to say is for this, but you get what I mean. Look at these side by side. They look quite different. There were also 2 pieces of clothing that were supposed to be included in the game, but never ended up actually making their way into the final release of the game. That would be this party dress and this tuxedo. Both look really cool. I wish these would have ended up making it into the final release of the game, but I don't know. They chose not to use it. Also, on April 26th, 2021, there was this screenshot for Animal Crossing New Horizons, and it was a little weird. This house in the background had never been seen before, and as it turned out, they weren't supposed to show this house off just yet. It wouldn't be added to the game until the 2.0 update, so the screenshot would later be replaced, and an apology would be posted on the Japanese version of the site for having inaccuracies in their game. I mean, I guess they were just kind of teasing something that would be coming way later on, but yeah, a little bit of an interesting thing to have end up happening. Over in the game Miitopia, there were actually really interesting Animal Crossing related crossovers going on over here. I mean, they did like a big Nintendo crossover, but in general, if you scanned a respective character's amiibo, you could get a cool Nintendo themed skin. As you can see, there's all these little costume skin outfits for various characters. Some are more cursed than others, but when it comes to Animal Crossing's representation here, we get to see one for KK Slider, Isabelle, Tom Nook, and Mr. Rossetti. All the way back in 2021, after updates for Animal Crossing were slowed to pretty much a complete halt, there were just like very, very small updates months apart with small content, like the cucumber horse that was added after months of nothing. But eventually, Animal Crossing version 2.0 would release, which would have the whole Happy Home Paradise expansion pack, you know, new villagers, a ton of cool stuff, and a whole like side game added to the game. That was awesome. And then after that, updates would slow even more dramatically. A couple weeks after the 2.0 update, we would get the version 2.0.1 update, which was a bunch of bug fixes, makes sense. Then a few days later, there would be another big update with more bug fixes. And then a few days after that, there was one more little update that added 2 small fixes here. But we start to get to the end game of Animal Crossing New Horizon bug fixes. And December 16th, 2021, they did a big update that didn't actually add new content, it just changed things and fixed some things. 2.0.4 was the last update to get some content in a very small form. They added the remaining Zodiac figurine items to be available through seasonal Nook shopping and set that up for the future, and you can also obtain them through Katrina. And then there was just a few more bug fixes, but they did change the names of fish and chips to fish hyphen and hyphen chips, and tea with silicone bib to tea with silicone bib. And then 2 months later, there would be update 2.0.5. And this was just some more bug fixes, fixing things that would be game breaking, like infinite loading screens in certain occasions and other things that were weird. And that would be it. February 15th, 2022. Or at least that's what we thought, but randomly November 14th, 2022, there was another update, and it was just a small security vulnerability apparently that could allow users to crash the game or inject their own code. This ended up getting patched out, and this happened simultaneously with other games that had already been abandoned, like ARMS, Splatoon 2, and Super Mario Maker 2. So it was just like a Nintendo-wide update. And that's where we are. That's every update at the end game of Animal Crossing New Horizons life, and it's been sad that we haven't seen anything else. Maybe we'll finally get a new game that's, you know, updated for more than a year. That would be really cool. While there are some tragic stories of Animal Crossing characters that would be completely not utilized in Animal Crossing New Horizons, may we get an RIP to our boy Digby. Just not really given that much of a role for whatever reason in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Digby, nonetheless, does have at least a little thing that happened after the big 2.0 update. Digby's photo became an item that you could get in Animal Crossing 2.0's free update. Also, when you interact with Digby's photo, you get a little bit of information, like his birthday, which is December 20th, and that his favorite saying apparently is 2-bedroom, 2-bath home for rent. Inquire with him. What a guy. Now, Digby's photo is a little bit interesting. You have to get it from Lottie after completing Digby's vacation home in Animal Crossing Happy Home Paradise, and yeah, that's how you get it from there. Now, what is interesting is that this item is considered lucky, though, which gives a 777-point Happy Home Academy bonus when placed in a player's home. And I feel like Digby's, close relation with the Happy Home Academy is a bit of a conflict of interest, and maybe, he's just trying to weigh the bets. He wants people putting pictures of him up inside of their houses. Did you guys know you can actually get KK Slider's music on real life vinyl? That is something I did not know about, but yeah, in Japan they released something officially called Atsumare Dobutsu no Mori Tota KK Music Instrumental Selection, and it's a vinyl that contains 18 KK Slider songs from Animal Crossing New Horizons. It also includes an exclusive remix of Hazure 02, which is one of KK Slider's secret songs, being announced in April of 2022, which was 2 years after New Horizons release. So that's probably why a lot of us maybe weren't paying attention to Animal Crossing news around this time. I mean, Animal Crossing had been abandoned for a while already. And then, despite it being announced in April of 2022, it didn't release until November of 2022. It is interesting, though. The composer Kazumi Totaka oversaw the mastering process, and while it retails for 4,600 yen, which is about $30 USD, that's still something really interesting. I feel like if I can find this at some store when I go to Japan next time, I might actually try to pick it up, because this is a really cool collector's piece. I don't even own a record player, but I just feel like Animal Crossing on vinyl is just a crazy sentence. This also includes a poster of KK Slider himself, so, extra bonus points on that one. Now, this record actually released at the same time as the Atsumare Dobutsu no Mori original soundtrack number 2 released, which was a follow-up to the original Atsumare Dobutsu no Mori original soundtrack, which had released a year earlier, which featured KK Slider songs. However, this version was an extra one, and it had live arrangements of KK Slider songs. It added new tracks that were introduced in 2.0. There's 5 CDs included and a DVD that contains group stretching videos. Wait, what? Has this been put anywhere online yet? I'd love to see how they did the group stretching videos. Are they special custom stretching videos just for people who purchase the thing, or are they just gameplay footage of stretching? I don't know. Nonetheless, across the 5 discs here, there's quite a bit of content and songs, and you get all the live versions of KK Slider's music. And if you pair this with the first original soundtrack, which contained air check versions of KK Slider songs, it had 4 CDs and background music. You have a pretty big Animal Crossing collection, especially because that first one had 173 background music tracks, which is quite a bit, and retailed for a little bit more than what the album vinyl cost itself. Quite a bit of interesting extracurricular Animal Crossing content that has been released for retail. I just want more DLC. Every single Animal Crossing game since the very first N64 Animal Crossing game has measured their maps and towns in some form or another, even if they were generated somewhat randomly using an acre model, where there were certain acres kind of dictating the grid that the town or island would be placed on. It is interesting to see how these have evolved over the years, though, because in the first generation of Animal Crossing games, the grid was actually really simple. It was a 5x6 area for each acre of an existing world. And back then, the Animal Crossing games would load based on where the player was, and it would follow the player, showing each acre at a time, and then the camera would pan to the next acre. That would be done away with, but the acre measurement system would continue to exist. Animal Crossing Wild World, they did have to kind of tone it down a little bit because, it's a DS game. Wild World towns only had 16 acres in total, and the acres were smaller than the GameCube era that were 5x6. In Wild World, they were just 4x4. City Folk did up the sizes a little bit. This time, each town would have a total of 25 acres, and the acres were expanded a little bit from 4x4 to 5 5 by 5, which is still smaller than the GameCube version, but also, you know, bigger than the DS version. However, it seems like after the release of Animal Crossing City Folk, maybe the development team thought that they pushed things a little bit too far, and City Folk's acre system with 25 acres was maybe a bit too big. So when Animal Crossing New Leaf rolled out, they actually scaled things down, having a total of 20 acres across the town, except the measurements would be changed once again, defining what an acre was, going from City Folk's 5 by 5, this time to a 5 by 4 acreage system, which was even smaller than before, but I think they just didn't want things to be so far spread apart, and they were on a 3DS. But I think New Leaf did things relatively well. However, when Animal Crossing New Horizons would come out, it would kind of change up the whole thing, because this time there was like an island, and it was round, and everything was going to be placed there. There wasn't going to be like a city area or a special little town area. It was all going to have to exist on the New Horizons map. So they went for the biggest yet with a 42-acre map. And they updated the size of the acres as well, where this time around an acre was 7 by 6, making it the biggest single acre since Animal Crossing originally released. I think this decision was also the right decision to make. New Leaf needed to have a smaller town, but with the way that they were doing New Horizons, with the materials and the little exploration aspect, and feeling like you really have all the room to just go all out, and especially with decorating outside, I think the decision ultimately to allow you to have a lot of space ended up paying off, because outdoor decoration is definitely one of the best things that came to New Horizons. And as much as people nowadays, hate on Animal Crossing New Horizons for not having all of the features from New Leaf, which a lot of the time are fair arguments, I still feel like there's not enough credit given to Animal Crossing New Horizons for being able to decorate outside to the capacity and scale that you can now. Even if it causes frame rate drops like on my town when you try to load and do anything. Nonetheless, it has been interesting to see how things have kind of changed and evolved with the whole acre system. And there's also some more interesting nuanced things that maybe we'll go into in a future video, where the rates of how things spawn in and how different aspects like that are affected based on the acre size, where you are, and also there are different things about which trees can grow on which acres depending on which game you're playing. That was always interesting. In the older games, cedar trees could only grow in the northernmost acres, and in New Horizons it can grow anywhere. I guess it's not that interesting, but you get what I mean, guys. There's more going on than just what you might initially think on the surface. But that brings us to an hour. Can you believe it? We have other long form content on this channel. Make sure you check it out if you like Animal Crossing content and you like to throw this stuff on. I appreciate it. A subscription goes a long way, even if it takes 2 extra clicks or you're on your TV or something. I'm a smaller Animal Crossing content creator in the big scheme of YouTube, and not too many people make Animal Crossing content, I feel, anymore. So I'm just out here. So your support goes a long way is what I'm trying to say. Nonetheless, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time with a new video.